mentoring and how important it was for you as young. We've heard Alan speak about it, we've talked a lot about it, we've talked about the importance of mentoring, but for you particularly, expand a little bit perhaps if we start on what you were saying earlier about the absolute importance of mentoring for you when you were young.
Absolutely. There are a couple of very crucial mentors when I started officiating and started my journey to international officiating. But the word mentor didn't exist in our vocabulary at that time. So looking back, I acknowledge they were mentors. But in particular, a couple of female officials who had achieved a certain status and who were in the position to offer advice and experience and to be able to share their networking and offer opportunities rather than being actually told how to umpire, but more as a sounding board and for me to be able to go to and ask questions and ask for their guidance.
Thanks, Diane. Now, Lynn, I'm going to throw to you, and you're going to spend a little bit more time. So I want you just to share the journey of your career and the mentoring along the way in a couple of minutes. I know it's hard because you've done so much, but yeah, just from how you got involved and as a player, shift across, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm recently retired international umpire. I retired 2 years ago, so I just always throw that out there. But I wasn't born into a hockey family. I was actually out on the school oval. Is that reverberating or is it just... That's all right, okay. I was playing cricket out on the oval, and my Year 6 teacher, Mr. Edwards, said, "You've got pretty good hand-eye coordination." And I said, "Yes, I do, sir." And he said, "Would you consider playing hockey, because I'm the hockey coach?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I will." And I made my first representative team the next year, so I'd only been playing for 12 months when I made my first rep team. I played representative hockey right through into my mid-20s. But I have to slow down because we're signing, sorry. And that's really, I'll try and I'll breathe. From there, but I have to get through it quickly too, none of you have told me.
No, you don't, just tell them.
Conflict. So basically what happened was it was my first year out of under 15 representative hockey, and my sister was still playing in under 15s, and they said, "Lynn, you're going to be at the tournament anyway, could you just umpire for us?" I said, "Sure." And I was talent ID'd at that point in time and umpired the grand final. So it was the first time, I suppose, I'd ever considered officiating in any capacity. We were doing some training on the Gold Coast, and that progressed the next year in my 16th year, because there was a boys' competition on Friday nights. And as a 16-year-old girl, when you're invited to go down and umpire 16-year-old boys, it's a pretty inviting thing to do. And we were paid. And I had a lot of fun, and that's where I suppose first stepped into the space and was supported by a variety of people. And it's pretty much the same story. Looking back, there were this amazing group of women on the Gold Coast who I didn't even realise at the time, but wanted you to succeed. And so they would support you and put barriers around you and promote you. And, like back in the day, you had to have specific skirts made, and they would make you your skirts. And just little things like that would really, really help. I didn't really progress into umpiring at that next level. We've got a lot of processes. We go through the Queensland system, and then we have to go through the national system, and then if you're lucky you get to the international system. So it can take many years. That's starting to change, thank goodness. I didn't crack my first Australian Hockey League until I was 27 years of age, and I was the youngest at that point in time and the only non-international. So it was quite intimidating, and my first AHL was the year 2000, I think, the Olympic year, so in Sydney. So it was quite interesting. I was appointed my international badge at 28 years of age. At 29, I was invited to participate in a program as recognition of one of the 10 most up-and-coming officials in the world. And at 30, I had my first baby. 33, I had my second baby. And I chose to take 6.5, nearly 7 years out of the international circuit to raise my children and to progress my career. Fought my way back into the international space at 37 and was appointed to the Road to Rio group at 39. I was the oldest person to be appointed in that space at that point in time. I missed out on the Olympics, which was, disappointing, but at the same time, I wouldn't change anything. And looking back on my career, to have umpired at Olympic qualifiers and World Series semi-finals and Four Nations tournaments, and to have travelled the world and to have made some of my best friends I wouldn't change a thing. That was my path and I chose it and I accept it, and I've had an amazing and successful career. But in the context of mentors, I think they change as you progress through your career as well. And I had this amazing group of women surrounding me as a teenager, and then as you progress, you tended to take other more experienced umpires did take you under their wing, showed you the ropes, talked to you about what you needed to do. But for me, a mentor, there's a difference between a coach and a mentor. And I think it's really, really important that we recognise that. A coach is there to tell you technically what you need to improve on and to change up. A mentor is someone that you go to and you might be struggling, and it could be nothing to do with hockey. It might be, look, I come from home, I've got the kids crying, my son's making me feel guilty for going to hockey, and I've got to go out and I've got to perform on the field. How do I manage that? Like, how's my headspace? Because it wasn't back in the day when we had open access to sports psychologists. How do you manage that? To get those top tips and tricks really, really were beneficial for me. And so I had a lot of amazing women who supported me and showed me the ropes and showed me how to move through the pathway. And had they not been there, I would not have had a career. And I don't think also I would have been able to come back into the space the way that I did. So.
Did you want to say something, Donna? No? Okay. There's an issue I want to raise with you both, because you're both parents, both mothers, and you took time off to have your babies. 6.5 years for Lynn, 2 months for Donna.
Yeah, sister. That's great.
I'd really like to hear your story around that, because Donna, you were pretty set on a path. The thing you haven't mentioned, and I'm not sure at what age you realise your son has autism,
Yep.
so that put another complication on top of that as well. But tell me about the period of time when you had to make the decision, what influence on your career having children would have, and whether there were people that you could talk to about that from a mentoring capacity, even though they might not be labelled mentors. Who did you go to for advice?
It was mainly an internal decision made, just myself and my husband. He was very keen to have a family. Me, not so much, but anyway, we did, and he had his own business at the time and suggested that when we did start a family, he would take time out from his business and I would resume working when I was able to, which was 2 months after Ryan was born. And we all travelled as a family for the first couple of years. So, when Ryan was 3 months old, we went to the US. When he was 6 months old, we spent 2 months in Europe, which all sounds very glamorous, but I can tell you the best places to breastfeed at various tournaments, and it was a challenge. It really was, because again, you had to commit to your profession, and you had to be on top of your game at work, and then come home after a 12, 14, 16-hour day and be a mum, be a wife. But we managed it. Shortly before, a week before his third birthday, Ryan was diagnosed with autism, which totally rocked our world. We took on research pretty much as a full-time job in how we could best help him. Went to almost every type of therapy under the sun, diets, supplements, etc. And groups where we were with psychologists, and so many of the specialists and the other parents in our support groups would say to me, "You are so lucky, you have a career, you have a job that you love." And I actually used my job and going away to work tournaments as an escape from reality and from the world of autism. And I think looking back, that has allowed me to be a much better parent. It's allowed me to be a much better official, and it's just enhanced my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
So then the process and decision making from your end?
Yeah, hockey's not a professional sport. So for us, there's no pay. Like as an official, we have to work full time. So I was a teacher originally. I'm now an official of the Queensland Teachers Union, and I also run my own small business as a personal trainer and coach. So you balance full-time work with raising children as well as officiating, and it's balls in the air everywhere all the time. And I suppose for me, what it boiled down to is, I fell pregnant with Harper. I fed him for 12 months. 9 months later, after I stopped feeding Harper, I was pregnant with my daughter. I fed her then for 12 months. So realistically, you're out for 5 to 6 years. And I found the interesting thing when I came back into the space, I was appointed to a Four Nation tournament in Durban, and a high-profile Federation of International Hockey official was at that tournament, Clive McMurray. And I'd been travelling for 30 hours, and I was really tired. And it was my first tournament away from home from my kids. And the first thing he said to me at dinner that night was, "How come you chose to have so long out of the sport?" And I had to think, I have to manage myself very well here. And I said, well, I find it very interesting that a male's asking that question, Clive. And that could have gone very badly, but it didn't. It went down really well. And I said, we had this conversation, and he had never thought or processed the decisions that I had to make, because he'd never had to make them. And yet he was making decisions about my career as an official. And I think those conversations we still need to have. Sorry boys, not one of you have had a baby in here. And you don't have to have your body to bounce back. Like to maintain your fitness, to maintain, for hockey officiating, we have to have a very high level of fitness. The fitness requirements are up here, and if any of you remember the old beep test, hit 10 or 11 on that, and that's our expectation for our officials. That's high. So after giving birth to 2 kids and maintaining fitness and all of those things, I suppose as much as we, Scott and I, my husband and I made that choice that I was going to take that time out, and there was a choice I would never change, that's my decision. The reality of the matter was I couldn't earn money from my sport, so there was no choice in that regard, I suppose. It was the decision that had to be made, and we made it, and I think one of the things, and I've mentioned this, and I remember a young official ringing me a couple of years ago, and she said, Lynn, I'm pregnant. And I said her name, and I said, that's fantastic, congratulations. And she burst into tears. She goes, my umpiring career is over. And it mortified me that even 2 years ago, our officials still have this perception that if they choose a family, their career's finished. And I think we need to change that space. We need to say, for the time being, you're going to have some time out. But there are many opportunities for you to continue your pathway, and this is what we're going to do to support you. And I still don't think in many sports we do that well enough. I think we can do it much better.
So the tricky question is to perhaps young officials out here who may want to have children. As mentors and experienced mentors, what would your advice be to women that are coming through and perhaps having to make sure, both of you made very clear choices that were all based on family discussions. What would you advise the younger officials in the room, young female officials, if they're looking at having families or career paths?
You can do it all, absolutely, without a doubt. And not only officials, but we're seeing in the sport of tennis a number of athletes who are having children and coming back to play at the elite level. Not only Serena and Vika, but there are other mothers who have got children now who are 3, 4, 5 years old and travelling. As an official, it can be done relatively easily. I think it's up to the individual and to what level you're officiating at. Tennis is obviously not as physical in terms of officiating as other sports are, but being a mother and being a wife and looking after your family is no different. So it's a choice, and it's absolutely doable. Absolutely.
I think there's still some changes to go, at least in hockey. For example, as an umpire, we have to stay in as a team. So if you're breastfeeding, your child's not allowed to stay with you. So, and I know I was told early on, I was contacted and they said, we want you to come back to AHL, and I'm still feeding Ivy. And I said, well, nice and simple, you can, I'm happy to come, but my child has to come with me because I'm breastfeeding. And that had never been done. And that was 2008, so it really wasn't that long ago. We're still breaking down barriers in that space, at least in hockey, and I think that would be the case in many other female-dominated sports. In our professional circuit, at least, having a child at a tournament is frowned upon, absolutely. So, and that might obviously not be the case in other sports. So I think we've still got a way to go. I think it is slowly starting to change. I was speaking to Jodie Kenny on the weekend, who's one of our amazing young female hockey players who's had a baby and has just been selected in the Commonwealth Games team. And I said, good on you, Jodes, that's fantastic. And she said, you know, Lynn, she said, I know a few others have done it, but I've got to pave the way here. Even as a player, as a woman, I've got to show that we can still do this. And we had some discussions around some of the tough decisions she's had to make and some things that have been thrown at her. I still think if you've got really good support from family and or friends, you've got to have your networks around you. And I think we do have to open our minds, in hockey at least, and I can speak from that perspective, around the fact that sometimes allowing some flexibility around engaging your families can be in the best interest of officiating. Because I'll be honest, one of the best tournaments I've ever had was when my children and my husband attended. They didn't stay with me, but I got to meet them for breakfast and I got to see them at the fields and I got to feed my daughter in between games, so we had to find a breastfeeding space because I didn't have one at the fields. And that was probably one of the best tournaments I had as an official because I was happy and I was comfortable and I felt that I can engage in different ways. So with my family as well as with my sport. And I think we still have to lead because we've still got a long way to go down that path.
So then let me pick up on that because I know you had an experience on the weekend and I don't need you to go through the whole bit, but you have an audience of men out here.
Yes, I do.
For them. We've talked about the importance of women making change, but they cannot do it without the support of men.
Yeah.
So what is the message, and Donna, you can think about this, is what is the message to the men in this room? If we're going to make change and affect change in this space, what do these guys need to do? They
need to walk with women. Men predominantly still hold power in sport. We've spoken about it tonight, you know, Thomas, some of your photos, which is like bloody hell. And it's fantastic that you've gone from 10 to 20 with your, you know, your gold badges and everything. I think that's fantastic, but we've still got such a long way to go. And I think if men can walk with women and better understand the needs of women, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, from a woman's perspective it's probably unfortunate, they're still making the decisions. They're making the big choices. And if you can make those with walking with us, you know, at no point did anyone say to me, you know, I had Clive McMurray, a male, say to me, FIH, why did you have so long out? It wasn't until I sat down with him and explained the choices that I'd had to make, that he'd never had to face it, a man, that he even understood that journey. And I think if men can better understand that journey, they can better support women to progress through. And I think until we have those discussions, until we open our mind, you know, I have some men say to me, oh, you're a feminist, you just go on a rant. And I'm like, well, no, I'm a woman making a very valid point. And there's a difference there, because if a man was having that discussion, it wouldn't be a rant, it would be a valid point. I think we have to own that language. I heard Ash said today he was having a rant, and I laughed because I thought it's the first time I've heard a male say that in a long time. But I think we have to own that space. As women, we need to own that space and not be scared of it. Have those conversations. You know, I know sometimes, even now, the other day I had to raise something with a male that I thought would make them feel uncomfortable and, oh God, how am I? And I thought, I'm not even practicing what I preach. And I had to go and have a really tough conversation. It worked out really well. But I could have very easily not have had the conversation and just let it slide. And I think sometimes as women, we've got to have that confidence to have those conversations and let people know how they can help us. You don't know what you don't know. We're not telling people how they're supposed to know so that they can help.
Come on.
The question again?
Message to the men.
No. I think we should all be treated equal is the main message. Obviously, we need males in female sports, and it's now, you know, female sports, female officials are becoming more and more prominent, and I think it's a matter of working together and respecting each other.
The final component, so we're going to have the guys join us again, but the final part, we talk about diversity, and this is support for women, support for people with disabilities. Can you just share quickly what Tennis Australia is doing in that space? I know it's important to be aware that what you're doing at the national model, I think, is something that can be looked at across the states. So would you mind sharing that with us?
So Tennis Australia very recently, in January, have set up a diversity and inclusion department. It's certainly in its infancy. But I think to raise the profile of officials and increase the number of officials, if we can draw from a larger pool of potential officials, which include all races, all genders, people perhaps with a disability, then we're all going to be better off in the long run.
Ladies, I'd like to talk to you all night. We do have a little bit more to go and people have got to go home. But ladies and gentlemen, can you please thank Lynn and Bonner?